Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us.
Omar, thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Dude, I am excited to have you on the show today. How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling good. I had to, for the sake of TMI for your guests, I had to replace a post on my fence today because it was about to collapse. So I got to get my hands dirty and remember why I do the work that I do.
It's got to be a little refreshing to, get your hands dirty every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, there was, at the end of it, my wife was like, we should have just hired somebody. And I looked at her and I'm covered in sweat and I have like dirt everywhere. And I'm just like, it's been a while since I've played in the dirt. And I'm like, yeah, but if I had hired somebody, they would have missed, or I would have missed the opportunity to hold the piece of cement that I dug out of the ground that took me about an hour and a half up in the air like Simba from Lion King. I mean, I literally held it in the air like I was some kind of Greek god that had just saved the world from downfall. And yeah, it was good. It was fun, but I'm glad it's over and I put the cement in with the new post.
Sounds like one of those epic moments. I can actually picture it too. Maybe some screaming. Ah!
there was all of that. It was a nightmare to say the least.
All right. Well, that's a good way to start. A little levity. All right. So, folks, today we have Mark Crandall joining us on the show. And Mark, at age 3, was taken from his biological mother by the Department of Youth and Families and placed in foster care system. The cards of life were stacked against him. Around age 12, he began contemplating whether or not to give up. He began to engage in criminal activity and act out his aggression at the expenses of others and society. Mark began to self-medicate and thus began his substance abuse. He was in and out of youth detention centers and other correctional facilities, but even in his lowest moments, Mark found himself surrounded by individuals who saw greatness in him. Sound about right, Mark?
Sounds better than I could have wrote it.
I get that. All right.
I have to hire somebody. Whenever I have something, like whenever I have to write about, like I can write content all day long, but whenever I have to write about myself, I have to hire somebody. Because I just can't do it for some reason. It's just not there for me. So.
Well, it's very eloquent to say the least.
He's a good copywriter.
Yeah, he is a good copywriter. All right. So before we dive into your story, tell us a little bit about what your normal daily routine looks like.
I change it up quite a bit. So, I mean, obviously your guests know that I'm in recovery and I've been in recovery. I've been a a member of the recovery community since 2007. And my practices change often. And the reason why I change my practice often is because I like to keep the spirit of why I'm doing it in play. And I find that when I get militant, like I did the Miracle Morning for 2 years straight, it got dry, it got boring, it turned into something that I needed to report out to the world, and ego got involved. And as my personal recovery is concerned and my relationship to a power greater than myself is concerned, there's no need for ego. And so currently it's going to sound weird, or maybe it won't sound weird. I do 5 minutes of silence, and then I do what is called intuitive journaling. Ooh. So I ask the universe or my higher power a question. I write it at the top of my journal, and then I just write. And everything that comes to me is nothing is governed, nothing's edited. I just write. And for those of you who are familiar with the roots of the 12-step work, the Oxford group, the OGs of the 12-step movement did something called quiet time. And it was the same practice. It was, silent meditation followed by journaling. And so it's the idea of I get quiet to listen to the universe, and then I write to receive guidance from the universe. So I'm not sure if that's what you meant as far as daily practice, but that's what I do. It's very short. It's very sweet. It's super effective. And then I go right into I outline, I'm a doer. So I do a lot, I'm up to a lot. And, you know, every year that I'm on this earth, walking this new way of life, I increase I raise the bar of what I'm going to achieve that year. And so then I go into my daily task list and I write out all of the objections to complete for the day. And then I have like an on hold column. And then I write out 5 things that I'm grateful for. And I have 2 people that I share that with. And so I share that out and then I start my day.
All right. Question. I'm curious about this 5 minutes of silence and then followed by the intuitive journaling. So once you're done with the 5 minutes of silence, right? Is the journaling based on things that come to mind during that 5 minute space that you're quiet, or how does that work out?
You know what? I have not done this, but for those of you who don't know, like I'm connected to like a brother from another mother. And so I feel really comfortable on his podcast.
Of course, as you should.
So here's the first, I'll share with you. I'm going to show you all. I don't know if you repurposed the video or not, but if you don't, I'm going to read this to your listeners. So here's the first day that I did it. My question for the universe was, what's next for me? And this is what I wrote, unedited, unscripted. It was seek solitude through the space between your ears and between your nipple and your spine. Although you think you are going within, you're seeking solutions and awakenings from the external. I will guide your next actions in the rest of your life if you get quiet and practice hearing me. So just to give you an idea of some of the stuff that comes out, like that's the type of stuff that comes out when I write, and you can see, more days of it. So
it's very poetic.
Yeah. I actually wrote poetry for a long time. So I'm a skilled writer, but I know people that are not skilled at writing that have had profound experiences doing this and practicing this for a while. And I give you another example. This was probably 6 years back when I was doing this same exercise. I was doing it and I was writing about who knows what, and it didn't make any sense. And then the final line was, call your mom and ask about finances. And in my head, I'm like, why am I going to call my mom and ask about finances? Like, it's none of my business. Like, why would I, like, that makes no sense, universe or God or whatever you guys believe in. Like, why would I do that? And I did that night because I have, learned to listen to my intuition and allow my heart to guide me. Sometimes I'm not going to come on your show and pretend to be like some spiritual guru. Sometimes I don't. Right. But I did that day. And I called my mom and I said, hey, Mom, I just wanted to call you. I did my quiet time this morning and you came up with my journaling and I got called and asked about finances. And I want to give a disclaimer. I know that this is none of my business and like, you don't have to answer this, but I wanted to take action on it because it was so random that I just wanted to see if there's anything attached. My mom starts crying on the other end of the phone, my adopted mother. And she goes, it's funny that you should call and ask that, Mark, because you're a stepfather and I don't know how we're going to pay the mortgage this month. Oh, and I said to her, I go, would 1,200 help? And she's like, that's the exact total of everything we need to pay this month. And I was like, I just wrote the check. I'll have it in the mail tomorrow. So that's that's like a real highlight reel. Other days, like, okay, universe, I have no idea what you're saying, but like some stuff like that comes out.
Dude, that is beautiful. I'm so glad I asked. And also something came out too, as a piece to that, there was a question there. So there was like, what's next for me? So there is a question that you ask before you go into silent meditation?
Yeah. So no, I go into silent meditation and I just still my thoughts as best I can. Mm-hmm. Some days, like this morning, the monkeys were up there throwing fruit and just like the practice of just sitting for 5 minutes and going, okay, monkeys, I hear you. No, that's a banana upside my head. Yep. And then I come out of it and then I just write whatever the first question is that comes to me.
Oh, I love it.
So I'm entering into a business partnership and that was a question. Like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? The guidance that I got was give him 51% ownership so that you have the opportunity to sell your shares so you can focus on what it is I put you here to do. So like that came out unedited. You know what I mean? So we actually had our, contract agreement 2 days ago. And I said to him, I was like, yeah, I want to give you 51%. He goes like, what? I was like, I just want the opportunity to sell my shares to you because I believe that the universe put me here for a reason. And I'm not sure at this point if this partnership is why.
Powerful. This is gold right here. And if we are able to quiet the mind enough to actually give it some space to give us the answers that we seek, they will come. But I think in many cases, we spend so much time focusing on those monkeys throwing bananas, right, that I can't get to that part where I actually go, okay, so now that that's happened, what do you want, universe? Or what do you want to tell me? Or what's the guidance? Or what's the message? Or what do I need to do today? Or what's my next move? Right. And I think that's the piece that I've never even tried that. So that's why I'm asking, because I'm curious, and I'm going to try it for like 5 days, see what happens.
Yeah, I would love to text me. I'd love to see snapshots. I'll even do an accountability swap with you. And, for your listeners out there, and I know that this is a large recovery / transformational community, is I have so much experience seeking the next Tony Robbins event, or joining this mastermind, or doing this or doing that, doing this, doing that, doing landmark, doing this, doing that. Like I've spent about in the 11 years that I've been in recovery, I've spent about $250,000 on transformational work. Right. And there's always another thing. You're in it.
Yeah.
There's always another thing, and there's FOMO, and there's like fear of missing out, and what are they doing? But the greatest change that I've seen in my own life is having a one-on-one coach and going within.
Yes.
Like that's it. Like I can go to UPW and get all jacked up. I see people do it all the time, like going to Tony Robbins and Landmark and all these other workshops and events, and they get all jacked up, and then they come home and they wonder why their life's not changing.
That one-on-one element is huge. It is, there's nothing that can replace that one-on-one. And if you're part of the recovery community, you can relate to that, because you know what it's like to go to meetings over and over and over and over and over and be part of the community and do service and all this stuff. But the real magic happens when you work the steps and you're working with a sponsor one-on-one. That's when the real transformation happens in recovery. It's no different in personal development. Correct?
That's 100% my experience.
All right. Well, mine too. So we kind of touched on it. We did the morning routine, or the daily routine, which actually was the morning routine. My next question is always, how do you maintain your spiritual condition? How do you maintain your spiritual practice? Is that basically it in a nutshell, or was there something else you wanted to expand on your higher power?
I mean, it's more and less. You know what I mean? So I find great spirituality when I'm on the water, bass fishing, which, since being in Texas, I haven't partaken as much as I did when I was living in New Hampshire. So I just find a great connection to the universe when I'm out in nature. Prayer. My wife and I pray, say a prayer at dinner. The practice of gratitude has really changed my life. And, at one time I was a militant big book guy, and, thought that all the slogans were BS and this and that. And I don't know if we'll talk about it on your show, but over the last year, I've had a real profound experience with a lot of those belief systems. And just, yeah, I'll say this, like I believe in mind, body, spirit. So I believe, I can feed my spirit as much as I want, but if I'm eating donuts and cookies, then I still feel like shit. Can I swear on here?
Yeah, fuck yeah.
I still feel like shit. And, so I also work out. I've been doing CrossFit for about 6 years now. I'm about to start martial arts back up because BJJ gym just opened up right next to the CrossFit gym that I help out at.
Awesome.
So I work out. Like I've found God in workouts, if that makes any sense, or higher power in workouts. Like when I see something on the board that is just like brutal. And I'm like 20 minutes or, 10 minutes, even 5 minutes into a workout. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck am I doing here? Right. And then when I complete it, you think about, I'll give you an example. Taking that cement, the cement post out of the ground today. And it was like, I was about to go to Home Depot and buy a massive sledgehammer. But instead, I chose to use my little E-swing hammer and a little pry bar. And I sat there and I chipped piece by piece by piece. It took me about an hour and a half, piece by piece by piece. I hit my hand like 3 times. But then at the end of it, it was just a massive victory. Because I was like, I should hire somebody to do this. Like, you don't do this anymore. Like, just duct tape the fence. It'll be fine. Like, all the thoughts that came through my head. And then there was this ringing from my adopted mother. She used to say all the time, like, any job worth doing is a job worth doing well. So I was like, no, I'm doing this. And I took every piece of cement out, it's bought a nicer post, and it's the victory in doing it. So long and the short of it is which I just gave you the long, like my spiritual practices. I do a lot of retreats. I do, I have 3 coaches that I'm working with. I am about to hire on a metta meditation coach that's a loving kindness meditation to go deeper again with that. I've done silent meditation retreats. I'm not scared to go sit at a church service. I'll watch online church services. I'll go hang out with Buddhists. I'll participate in Native American rituals. So I'm like a coexist bumper sticker. I just love it all. I love and embrace it all. And sometimes my spirituality is the bar is much higher than other times, but a consistent practice for me is 5 minutes and then journaling.
Yep.
And then going into my daily task list. It's just been consistent for me for a long time.
Love it. Love it. I just started CrossFit, by the way. And I do, man. I love it. Addicts, if you haven't tried it, go for it. Spend a week in there. Within 1 or 2 weeks, you'll be addicted. It's super addicting. And
that's the whole, it's the whole environment of there's always something for you to learn, but then there's a community to support you. If you're at a good gym, for those of you that are listening, if you're like, oh, I've tried CrossFit before and I didn't like the gym, like go find another gym, because the community aspect is the greatest part of it. And I'm more in shape than a lot of athletes that come into our gym. So I've been doing it for a while and I know the movements and I know how to breathe, so I can spare myself some suffering. But it's like one of my favorite things to go over to Betty, who just joined the gym, and she's like on the struggle bus. It's like when she finishes a workout, I'm tearing up even saying it. I didn't know that was coming, but I feel joy. I feel like we made it. You know what I mean? And it's just, I love it. The whole CrossFit name is dying a little, but
that's okay. That's okay, because it was getting a little too out of control. A little too much. Everybody was talking about CrossFit. What was it? First rule of CrossFit, always talk about CrossFit. Second rule about CrossFit is always talk about CrossFit.
That's like any CrossFit gym that's out there that's not allowing their athletes to market for them or making a mistake, because anyone that does CrossFit wants everyone to know they do CrossFit.
It's the fucking best. That's the best. Hey, so listen, I got a ton of questions. We might get to all of them. We might get to only half of them. It doesn't really matter. I love the way this is flowing already. But what really caught my attention in your bio was about being at age 3 when you were taken from your biological mother by the Department of Youth and Family and placed in foster care. So there was that time from 3 years old up until you took your first drink or drug. And I would love to know, and if go into as little or as much detail as you feel comfortable with, but what happened?
I wrote a book about it. So it's called Eulogy of Childhood Memories, and I'm about to re-release the second edition. And in the second edition, the first half of it's my story, and the second half of it is a step-by-step process of how I teach anyone with past trauma how to overcome the victim mentality and live live their life using their past as fuel. So there's a little plug, my first plug in your show.
That's key. You're more than welcome to do as many shameless plugs as you'd like.
No, I don't. I mean, I'm not that guy. But that, I just threw that out there. So my story is an open book, literally. So my DCYF took me from my mom at 3. So what had happened was they took my sister who had cerebral palsy. My mom nearly drowned her in a bathtub. And please don't go, if you're listening to this, like, I guess you can. I'm not going to tell you that.
I know, I was about to say it, and I was like,
Yeah, you have listeners out there that are like, this fucking asshole, unsubscribe. Don't unsubscribe. Forgive me. And so DCYF took my sister, and then my mom kidnapped me. So they were going to take me as well. My mom kidnapped me, brought me to New York. And I have a memory of the phone call coming in New York at 3 years old. I have memories from that far back. And some people say you're not supposed to. I know some other professionals who've said, oh yeah, it's common, especially with trauma. It's, planted in your brain. And so, yeah, anyways, DCYF brought me and dropped me into the foster home in which my sister had already been placed. And I had 2 of the most amazing foster parents. They're just amazing. They're still huge parts of my life. Like, I talk to my adopted father once a week, if not twice a week, just to talk. With my wife being pregnant now, he's like calling me more, and he sent me a couple packages of baby clothes and stuff. So it feels cool, but it wasn't always like that. And so I guess the long and the short of it is like, and it's the second time I've made that reference. So which really means, for those of your listeners who don't know me, I'm about to get really windy. So I just say long and then short to kind of hook you till the end, right? Because I'm about to get real wordy on you. And so I hated myself, and the hatred, the self-hatred was literally built off just a ton of confusion. Why do other kids have parents and I have these replacement parents? Like, why do other kids have siblings that, don't have these birth defects as a result of my mom smoking crack during pregnancy? Like, just all these questions were coming up for me. And, I was a rough kid. I had all of the traits of a serial killer at the age of 3. And 6, they were even more defined. So I was, for the sake of being judged by your listeners, I was setting fires. I was killing animals. I was assaulting people. At 6 years old, it was the first time I got suspended. I got suspended from preschool for a week for splitting a girl's head open with a wood chip. So just to let you know, the suffering within me, I had no idea what was going on. I had no wording to put to it. I was just so confused and lost. And so what that looked like was aggression. I would just take it out on anyone around me. And it escalated. I was stealing from kids. First, I think it was first or second grade, I stole this kid Jamie's Ninja Turtle collection. It's in my book. I changed his name in the book, but I dropped his name here. I stole his Ninja Turtle collection, and like, that's what it was. Like, I was constantly taking things that didn't belong to me to try to fill something within me that I didn't even know needed to be filled, nor did I know what I was filling. But there was just this longing for more. And I just spent my whole childhood wanting to know my biological parents. And every time I would come up to and be presented with my biological parents, I didn't like what I was presented with. And so I would go back in and then go external and just take it out on the world. And it escalated. At 11 years old, I had a CHINS petition filed on me, which is child in need of services. It's basically when your parents seek help and they go to the state and say, this kid's out of control, like, please help us. And I was, and God bless them. And, they had some guidance from a man who, has played a major role in my life, is Dr. Steve Atkins, who was my therapist from the time I was like 8 through, I would say 16 was when I stopped seeing him. And he used to tell me that I was a pendulum, but what he was really telling me is I had bipolar tendencies. I didn't know it at the time. I was a lunatic. And yeah, and so I ended up I spent 2 years in group homes and, facilities in which you're supposed to become rehabilitated. But what happened was I got educated from older youth on, some sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And so when I came home, I asked my mom to, buy me some nicer clothes because I was going to change. So I went from, wearing a Manson shirt with holes in my jeans and, like that kind of, it was big into Slipknot, just the outcast kids that I hung out with. I bought preppy clothes and I went to school and I was a prep. And at this time I got back to school at like 15. I only smoked weed once at that point, and I drank some of my dad's beers, but I don't ever remember like catching a buzz. But man, that year in high school, when I entered high school, my buddy Jamie, the kid I stole Ninja Turtles from, first day back after placement, said, "Hey, you want to get stoned after school?" I was like, I don't know what that means, but I did, had I not been educated by all of these other kids in the detention center, I wouldn't know what it meant. So I did know. I knew as soon as he said it. I'm like, yeah. I didn't know what it meant though. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know that we were gonna, go smoke gravity bongs out of a milk jug in his bathtub. But that's what we did. And it just took off, man. It was like I was literally waiting for these substances to take me out of my mind for years. I just didn't know what I was looking for. And we can get as far into the progression as you want. But yeah, it escalated, and I didn't, like in, Bill Wilson's story, I didn't draw a sober breath
since that moment.
Yeah.
So, one of my questions is, so you were 15 years old, so we know how old you were, but what did that feel like when it, at first you said you drank the beers and didn't get a buzz, but now all of a sudden, for the first time, you get that buzz. What was that like?
It was amazing. It was amazing. I'm like, it was just amazing. Like when you have internal dialogue of self-hatred and self-loathing, and you're the fat kid and you're worthless and your parents hated you, and anyone that's ever said they loved you has walked out of your life, and you're stupid. And you remember in second grade when green eggs and ham went around the room and you couldn't read it, like everything faded from me. And I don't need to explain it to your listeners. Nope. They get it, right? Like everything was gone. That's the unfortunate part of that is that was like the initial high, right? I needed more and more, and I had to increase the game, if you will, to get the effects produced. And it escalated to heroin, and how that happened was I hit my weed dealer up. I was like 16 at the time. So it was like maybe a year and a half into the pot game. And I was like I was just like a fucked up, like shithead dealer. Right. So I would like put the weed in, on top of celery overnight, celery sticks overnight. And what it would do was the weed would soak up the moisture from the celery sticks, so it would like double, if not triple, the weight of the buds, right? So I'd give you like one bud and it weighed like shitbag kid, right? But I was it was just this constant, like I just need to have the means to get out of my head, but I didn't have those words. It was like just this move that I was making. So I hit my dealer up, and his name was Corey. For story's sake, for your listeners, I just want you to. He was a redhead, skinny, ginger-looking kid, weird kid. But anyways, he had good pot. And so I hit him up. I'm like, "Hey, bro, I'm coming over." And he's like, "Yeah, you can come over, but I don't have any pot." And I was like, "Well, why would I come over, dude? I don't like you." Right? I literally, every time I would think about robbing him and zip tying him. So I'm like, okay, why would I, I'm on the phone with him. I'm like, "Why would I come over then?" And he's like, "Because I have something better." I'm like, "Ooh, got me." If you want to talk about a hook to a sale,
yep,
better than the pot that you have, bro. It's the best in town. And he's like, yeah, come over. So I came over, and again, I knew from the group homes, but I didn't know. And he goes, I have these other little bags, and that's what he said. These other little bags. He didn't come out and say it. And he's like, if you sniff one, it's like smoking 2 blunts. I was like, well, I kind of want to smoke 4. So he's like, all right, $20. I gave him $20. I sniffed 2 bags of heroin. And, I don't need to tell your listeners what happened, but I was sitting Indian style in a church parking lot about an hour later, puking all over myself and just like I had arrived. Like it was the greatest day of my life. And, it's just like, if your listeners could see the smirk on my face, right? They know, right? They know it's like I had arrived, and I chased that dragon as far down the hole as I could get, which led me to prison. But and homelessness, I was homeless for about 2 years.
Well, let's not gloss over that. So,
Yeah.
And without glorifying it though, because the listeners do like to get a little bit. So my question is, how has addiction played a role in your life, and what did it cost you? So give us a brief overview on that.
Yeah, so I'll play this in I write it out much more poetic in my memoir, but I'll give you an example of the final days, right? So I was on the run for burglaries. I had ran from 3 different law enforcement agencies. Like I was on the Channel 9 News, which is the big news outlet in New Hampshire, for like 3 nights in a row. And I was sleeping in a ski jump, and I had a cell phone that was full of numbers. And I knew in my soul that not a one of them would have picked up if I called. And I just become like the scum of the earth. Like I was the dude you didn't want to see come to your house, not because I was tough. And I used to like sell that up like, oh, it was just so bad. No, I was just like a lunatic. Like I might set fire to your mom's rug, yep, or break a window or like steal stuff. Like I was that guy you didn't want around. Like I was an asshole. And, that night, I remember it was the 4th of July, and I was on the run, and I had no one to hang out with. That night I robbed a good friend of mine, and to get some weed and some I forget even what I stole, maybe some coke or something, which is bad for me. Amphetamines and me are just not good. Like I want this mind to go to sleep, not wake up, right? And for those of you amphetamine addicts, man, I don't get it. I just wanted my mind to shut down. I definitely didn't want to take out a notebook and start plotting like how I was going to do all these things in life. No, I wanted to go to sleep so I could stop thinking about killing myself. Yeah. And so that's what it looked like. It was dark. I had no one, and I bounced from place to place. And, my grandmother said she was going to disown me. It was a huge figure in my life, and just homeless, just a homeless dope fiend, stealing from anyone he could to try to get his fix because I was unemployable. I couldn't hold a job. I had nowhere to go. I smelled horrible, and yeah. So is that a better picture painted for you?
Yeah. What was it? Hopeless demoralization, however you want to paint that. So you hit this rock bottom moment. What was that rock bottom moment that got you to the next, whatever that next thing was? Was it rehab? Was it a family member? What was, there was that one moment where I'm done.
Yeah. So it was in August of 2007. I can't give you the exact date. And I was in New Hampshire State Prison, and I was 2 weeks away from getting released to go to a long-term therapeutic community treatment center that I got court ordered to. And I had been using drugs the entire time I was in prison. So for 2 years, I was wasted pretty much. And for those of you who haven't been in there, it is achievable. And I was just wasted. And I woke up one morning and I just had crippling fear. And the thought came to my mind, and it was this: Mark, if you can't stay sober in prison, how the fuck are you going to stay sober in the real world? Mm-hmm. And I was fucking terrified, right? So my bottom came in prison. And I know some people, and I'm so grateful for the New Hampshire State Prison system and I'm grateful for the judge that handed me my sentence. And I'm grateful for all of the players that said, no, this kid no, go, you're gone. See ya. And I needed every moment. And if they had shortened my sentence, if they had let me out early, if I had done another county bid, I probably wouldn't be here. But it was 2 years, and it was just enough time for me to marinate and cook in there and really think. And, that morning that I woke up and I started crying, which is something you don't want to do in prison, but I did. I was, and my bunkie was like, dude, what the hell? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, get it together. And I go, bro, like, I'm about to go to rehab, and like, dude, I rob people. Like, I'm a shitbag, and I'm crying like snot bubble tears in prison, which you don't necessarily want to do. And
terrifying.
But I was, and he was like, bro, get it, like, pull it together. He didn't get it. He didn't, he was Aryan Brotherhood, right? So he didn't fucking care. Like, bro, get it together. Like, get your shit together. And I got quiet. I don't even remember how, but I was like, I went out, everyone went to breakfast, and I did a lap around the yard. I got a CO's permission. I was like, I just need to think about something. Can I just take a walk around the yard? And they're like, yeah. Took a lap, went to chow, breakfast, for those of you who aren't incarceration people like me. Went to chow, went to get breakfast, and this thought hit me: go to the spot in the library that you've never been before. I'm like, well, what the fuck does that mean? It's like some, Narnia bullshit, right? Like, just like, okay. And so I walk into the library, and I'm like, okay, where's the spot, right? And I probably look like a weirdo, which I normally do anyways, even sober. I look like a weirdo sometimes. But it's the self-help section. I've never been there, right? And it hits me. And I'm like, there's like a self-help / spirituality section. And the only time inmates ever went back there was to exchange drugs, right? Like, it was in the way back to the library. Yep. So I just never thought to go back there to actually look and see what books were in there. And I mean, I read books in prison. Like, all I did was read and write and play Skip-Bo and cribbage. That's all I did every day. So, I mean, I'll give you an example. I read the whole Hannibal series in 4 days in prison. Like, that's all I did. And 2 of the books are pretty big. But anyway, so I went to this section of the library, and I'm like, okay. So I'm like waiting for like doves to fly out of a book or something. Nothing's happening. And I'm looking around, and then all of a sudden I see a book, and it's this man. He's bald, and he's wearing a red and orange robe, and he's got this smile on his face, like from ear to ear.
The Dalai Lama.
And yeah, and it was the Dalai Lama. And I picked up the book, and I checked it out, and I went back to the unit, and I started reading it. I read half the book that day. That night, after taking my Seroquel, my sleeping meds, I wrapped a towel around my head, and I sat there to meditate because I was going to follow the directions in his book. And I sat there, and I think I ended up nodding out, but it was from that moment, I got some relief even in that first meditation that I hadn't experienced. And so here's the piece about recovery, right? And I think it's a piece that does, and for those of you who are struggling, like, please, listen to this. Maybe you can put it in your notes. Say, listen to minute, 45 of this podcast. That's where the fire hits. I practice spiritual principles for the same reason why I did dope, for the effect produced. Like, that's it. If, my first sponsor in recovery said that to me. He's like, hey, like, what? I was like, dude, why the fuck should I do these 12 steps? Like, outside of the fact that I have nothing to, like, I have trash bags of clothes in a rap sheet a mile long, with no job history other than painting, right? Which, served its purpose. But he's like, why should I do it? And he's like, bro, because when I lay my head on the pillow at night, I fall asleep. When I'm driving down the road today, I'm not worried if I see a cop. Like, I literally sometimes I'll hope to get pulled over today, not then, right? And so what I've found was the more energy I put into practicing spiritual principles and diving into transformational work and like the stuff that I talked about before, going to Tony Robbins, or like, I'm about to hire another coach right now, which is going to cost me about $1,600 a month for 2 sessions, right? So $800 sessions. It's for the effect produced. The more I invest in myself time-wise and financially, the more I reap internally. If that makes any sense to your listeners. And I know it does. Like, it's like the first time I did heroin, those 2 bags of heroin, how high I got. Right. And then I did heroin for years after that, and all kinds of other substances, and pounded Jägermeister for years after that. But you never get the same buzz as that first time. It's never the same. You're always chasing the dragon, if you will. Right. It's like, it's never the same. Not the case with spirituality and transformational work.
Yes.
I get higher and higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. That's why I do it. I don't do it so I can sit here and say, oh, I did a week-long silent meditation retreat. I didn't talk to anyone, look anyone in the eyes. I cried a whole bunch. No, I didn't. I don't fucking do it for that. I don't practice the 12 steps because it's cool and it's something to talk about. I don't do meditation because it's cool and something to talk about. I do it because I love the effect produced. I love being high. I love loving myself. I love setting super unrealistic goals and then achieving them and being proud of myself that I achieved them. It's so if you're in here and you're like, oh, I don't understand what this kid's talking about, or like why he changed his life, it's because I got a taste, right? It's like when the dealer used to give you a sample, right? But he'd give you the best stuff for the sample, but it just never happened to be as good when you would start buying it, right? It's the same thing, but different. Is he gives you the sample of spiritual principles, gave me a sample of the best it had. And like, for some reason, something's going on. Like they're hot, like they're doing some good work in the lab. The shit just keeps getting more and more potent the deeper I go. Just does. And I'm open to like, you call it a cult. Like I'll go to I just love transformational work so much. I'll go to anything. The weirder it is, the greater chance that I've done it and or will do it. Like, I just love it. I love the introspective process of continuing to peel the onion and peel the onion and peel the onion. I just love it.
So when did you go back to school and start getting licensed?
Yeah. So it's I'm not even going to disclaimer this one. It's a long story that I am going to shorten for the sake of O's podcast episode and for you guys. I don't want you unsubscribing from him. I actually want you to subscribe and rate it if you haven't already.
Thank you for that.
So here's what happened. Well, what they don't know is like, that's how our message gets into the ears of those who don't know that they want to hear us, right? They think we're just asking them for something, but like iTunes and all of these systems have algorithms put in place that if you don't do that for us, like we don't get to get thrown in front of that person that needs to hear us, but doesn't know that they need to hear us. So that's why I ask. And that's why I just threw that out and I just ranted, and I'll get off my soapbox and tell you why I went to school. So it was my second year out of rehab, and I was painting and drywalling, and in New Hampshire during the winter, work dries up. So only the owners of the companies do work, and you don't get work. And I completely forgot because I, obviously had a shoddy work history and, just got out of prison. And so I was struggling financially. I didn't have, I had enough to pay that month. Maybe it was December or whatever, but I didn't have any work coming in, and I was going into some depression, which I did for the first 4 years of my recovery during the holidays, which is the root of most of the traumatic events from my past. And I'm sitting there and I'm doing the same exercise that I'm telling you about, this intuitive journaling. And I got quiet that morning and I did my journaling. And what I got was go to school for psychology. Never thought about it before. I'm like, okay. So there I was. I had internet. And so I plugged it into the old Google, and like these online schools started popping up. And so I applied and didn't think I was going to get in, but due to the fact that New Hampshire State Prison had mandated me to get my GED, I had a GED. And so I applied and got accepted and started classes. Like, I think by the end of the next week I was in classes. And I started going. I had no idea what I was going to do, no clue that I was ever going to be able to do anything due to the amount of felony convictions that I had. And I just kept going. I ended up getting my bachelor's in human services, and I was reading Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within. And in it, he mentions mentorship, and I didn't know what mentorship was. Now I'm very, very clear on it, as I am one. I do a lot of coaching, as do you. And so I went to school that weekend, and I'm going to school now. I'm speeding the story up for you. So I went online because I thought I was stupid and wasn't going to pass, and I didn't want to see people when I was told that I was dumb and I couldn't do it. So I went online. It was easy. And I ended up getting 4.0s the whole time I was there. So I was challenged to go to a face-to-face school. And so I did. And I walked up to this man who was my professor, and I said, "Hey, I need a mentor." And he goes, "What does that mean?" And I was like, "I don't know, but I need one. Will you be it?" And his name was Marty. And he goes, "Absolutely." And he goes, "What are you trying to do?" And I was like, "Well, here's my story." And I dumped it on him. And he's like, "Well, there's a position open. I can get you an interview. I can't get you the job." And I was like, "Give me an interview, man. I'll get the job." And of course, in the back of my head, it's like, dude, you have like 6 felony convictions. You're never going to get fucking hired anywhere. Like this is going to happen. But I've done enough work at this point to know that my thoughts are not me. Right. And so my thoughts are just the only thing separating me from being what the universe wants me to do or God wants me to do. And so I said, fuck it. I went, interviewed, nailed the interview, got a second interview. And at this time, it was working with runaway and homeless youth in Manchester, New Hampshire. The manager of she was the hell was she? Supervisor of the runaway and homeless youth program. In the second interview, had a youth that was there to interview me. And I was terrified, right? At some point in that interview, I just snapped and flipped it. And I started interviewing him, and everything, like all these skills that I didn't even know I possessed, came out. And I just flipped the interview, got the job. Later applied for another position, and I was, one of the first felons to be hired by the state of New Hampshire. I worked in a youth detention center in New Hampshire and Manchester. And then, after getting my bachelor's degree, was going to go get my license. I was going to be a licensed master clinical counselor or some shit. Now I forget what the acronyms are, but doesn't matter. But it was a super easy program, and my mentor challenged me to go get a more difficult degree. And so I applied to, didn't think I was going to get into the University of New Hampshire for their master's of social work. Got accepted and graduated with a 3.8 something. Not the best academically, but you put me in front of a room with a topic and I will crush it. I don't need preparation, right? I will bullshit. And it got me through grad school, and so then the progression from that was, I got licensed, and now I hold 2 licenses. I'm a licensed master social worker and a licensed chemical dependency counselor. I practiced therapy for other individuals for about 3 years after working with runaway and homeless youth, and said, fuck this. I don't want to do 50-minute sessions anymore. I want to do positive psychology and really work on creating change. That whole system's broken, but I don't even want to get into it on your podcast. But so, that's what happened. And, I wrote a book, launched a podcast, started a coaching business, have built 3 6-figure coaching practices, online courses, whole bunch of shit. I mean, you know what I'm up to, but your guests don't. And I just I don't do it for the money, guys. I don't. The money is a byproduct of bringing value to others. And I'm in this world to serve. I do sliding scale coaching. I have clients that I work with for free. And as I bring that into the world, the universe just takes care of me. I get paid keynotes now. I have clients that are paying me hundreds and thousands of dollars to work with them, to coach them. And so it's a really short answer to a long process.
Brilliantly done, though. Brilliantly done. So I'm going to keep asking questions, but first, tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you, your podcast, your website, everything, so that if they want to find you, they can.
Well, it just so happens that I strategically placed everything about me on my website. So if you go to markcrandall.net, you can get the podcast, which my podcast is Purpose Chasers Podcast. And, O's coming on. He's going to be a guest on there. And it's just, I interview people on this really similar to what O does, on his podcast, which is, I just want to talk to individuals and find out what their pivotal point was in which they started to chase purpose in their life. But the reason why I started the podcast was to get into the ears of those that don't know that they even want to or need to listen to it. I want to shake up society. So I'm all there. You find me on the book, find me on the Instagram. I'm on the LinkedIn. I'm on all that stuff. I don't know how to use most of it, but I do the best that I can. And
don't worry, I'll list these on the show notes for you. All right, I love it. So here's the thing that kind of really grabs me, and a lot of times people have no idea what they're gifted at. They have no idea what their talents are. They have no idea. They've been bombarded with so much information since they were born about what they should be doing, about how they should be doing it, what direction they should be going, and how they should be studying. And so a lot of times that their natural gifts and talents do not get an opportunity to evolve or develop naturally. You've got this just incredible sense of confidence, and you've got these gifts that you are now using, and you're using them to help people transform their lives. When did that start to manifest itself from this kid who was like first, abandoned basically, and then not abandoned, but just placed in foster care? So like all these limiting beliefs, popping up. Then I end up in jail. Then I end up doing all these drugs, getting into recovery. When does this strong, powerful man emerge? And what are the gifts that you discovered you had or have?
So it was a process. I had a really close friend of mine, Christy, die by suicide. And it was I'm going to tear up again. I mean, I miss her so much. And I had a moment after she passed, and it was a question that I asked myself, and it was, what the fuck are you doing? And I know, if your listeners are going to be authentic with themselves in recovery, like they've asked themselves in recovery, like, what the fuck are you doing? There's got to be more to this. There's got to be more than going to fucking meetings and hearing Stan talk about his fucking wife again, drinking shitty coffee and pretending to like people that I don't give a shit about, right? I'm just being real. Like, you guys are thinking this, right? I'm sponsoring people only so that I can show the world that I'm sponsoring people, and I'm going on commitments so that I can be a fucking hero. And I was a militant big book guy. So like, I was a part of a group. We were doing 27 commitments a month. I was sponsoring 15 guys at a year sober. Like, just not so fucking shit, right? And I'm like, there's got to be more to recovery than this. Like, because I can't do this long term. Like, this sucks. Like, I'll just be straight. I don't like meetings. I don't. I'm just throwing it out there, guys. I love the 12 steps. I don't like meetings. I don't like how they're set up. I don't like what they've turned into. I just don't like them. But I go, right? So, and that thought of what the fuck am I doing was followed by this reflection. So for you, those of you that are listening, I would ask you to sit with this. If you want to find out what it is you want to do, where you want to go, what your powers are, sit with this. It's going to be super uncomfortable for some of you. Some of you are going to love it, like me, who are a little psychotic. And it is, when on my deathbed, am I going to regret the life I lived? I just got goosebumps saying that, right? And so sit with that question and then follow it up with, what actions could I take in this life to change the way that I felt about the life that I lived? They're there for you. I guarantee it. They're there for you. So that's what changed for me. I mean, I have like poking out of my arms goosebumps sharing that with your listeners. I don't think I've ever dropped that on a podcast before, but that's what happened. That's the reflection. It's something that I still sit with. I only have one fear in my entire life, and that is dying with regret.
Love it.
Didn't want to jump out of a plane, jumped out of a plane just so I could say I could jump. I jumped out of a plane. And so to answer your second question, I am some gifts that I didn't know that I had. I'm very, very good at sales. But more than that, I'm really good at building relationships. I'm extremely skilled at finding other people's vulnerable spots and empowering them through it. And I'm extremely skilled at empowering individuals to find their why. If you don't know why you're here, you're never going to do epic shit. Because the why of being of service is just so fucking fluffy and cliche. It just is, guys. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, I might offend some of you. Hopefully I don't. It's just fluffy and cliche, but like, why are you here? Like, my wife's why is to be a mother and to be a stay-at-home mom. That's why she's here. I need to get really clear on my why. My why is to change the way that trauma victims view their trauma and show them through the life that I live that they can use their trauma as fuel to create the life of their dreams and achieve anything they want. Now, did I get to that clarity? Like, you know, after listening to O's podcast and some knucklehead like me talking about this stuff? No, I've been chasing this spirituality, this transformation for 11 years, like a dope fiend. I just want more. I want more. I want more. And when I come up against the wall, dude, I mean, I've spent, what's the most I've spent? I think 10 grand for a transformational weekend, right? Like, so I'm not like, this money is not mine. Like, the universe provides me this money to empower my family and myself. So like, if spending, I'll use you for an example, right? So if coaching, if I knew going into it that hiring O as a coach was going to catapult my existence and tenfold my financials, right? Which all this stuff does. It really does. So financial insecurity is the number one block to transformational work. I get it all the time with people that want to coach with me. And what I say to them is you're not questioning the investment that you're going to spend in me. What you're questioning is whether or not you're worth the investment. So it was a transformation to really, really take in and own the fact that I'm worth it. And I chase it. And again, my skills just continue to unfold. I mean, I'm a really good podcast host. I love interviewing people. I'm an extremely skilled speaker. I am also very gifted at facilitating workshops and running groups and, you know, creating transformation in numbers. And it's all been a process of walking through fear, gaining coaching, finding expertise, and just continuing to grow and grow and grow and grow. And for those of you militant 12-steppers that are listening, because I know you're out there, I still absolutely love the 12 steps. Don't get me wrong, but there's a line in the big book that I want to drop on your podcast. If you're okay with that, O.
Drop it.
He's not gonna tell me now.
No.
The line is, be quick to see where religious people are right and make use of what they offer. Go further, guys. The 12 steps were a staircase. I'm getting like real deep goosebumps again. The 12 steps were a staircase to introduce me to a power in which I need to go find other people that are going to push me and empower me to grow closer to that power now. Not worship the staircase that got me to the power. So that's all I would say is, like, you know, I'm actually being reached out to by a lot of people that are in recovery recently that are like, how did you do this? Like, what are you doing? I'm like, dude, I'm doing a lot of stuff outside the rooms. It's really cool if you want to check some of it out. It's super cool stuff.
Well, here's the reason why I shifted and went from share to the recovery revolution is for that statement that you just said right there. I'd reached a point in my life where that question, what the fuck am I doing, comes up. And there's got to be more. And so when I started to reach outside and move into the personal development space, and when I got my first coach, things just started to change radically. So like you, I view the 12 steps in my recovery that I spent 15 years in. 15 years, well, I've got 15 years now. But solidly over 10 years where, you know, I worked the steps, I was of service, I sponsored guys, I took commitments, right? And I built this solid foundation of recovery that I could now build a life on top of. But I'm not going to sleep on the foundation. I got to build something on top of it. And so that's basically how I paint the picture for myself and for others. It's like, this is a great foundation. This is like going to junior college, right? Or even going to college. Let's just say you got your bachelor's, right? Now it's time for me to get my master's degree and my doctorate. And you could just keep going and going and going. You could just keep adding on to that. That's going to allow you to add more value into the world. And then what you said here, as far as this whole idea of whether or not I want to invest in myself, it's like you said, it's not whether or not I see value in whatever it is that you're offering. It's more about, do I see value in myself? Am I worth this investment? Am I worth it? And a lot of times that's so many layers deep that, you know, no is the first thing that comes up. But like I've said it before, it's like, I remember telling somebody, it's like, you know, I've had to shift, because what I realized about people in Narcotics Anonymous, or even, you know, people that have been down that road, is that they don't spend money on anything other than drugs. You know, so
that's bullshit. They blow money on fucking energy drinks, Jordans, and fucking all kinds of foo shit that you think is going to make you feel good until they get scuffed or get stolen. Or I get it, I did it. You know, it's long lasting. Like, it's like, we're talking about revolutionary change, not, you know, a new pair of sneakers.
No, absolutely. So and I love that what you said about spirituality. I got that taste. And as soon as I got that taste, I ran with it, and it just kept getting better. And the high just kept increasing. And if you can connect with that, if you can connect with the idea that the universe is completely expansive, and so are you. You are just, the more positive things you put in, you know, that you take into your ears or through your eyes, that you absorb, that you're able to grow, it's the more value you're going to be able to contribute out into the world, and the more confident you're going to feel, and the more you're going to be able to understand what the fuck even Mark and I are talking about on this interview. You know, because, you know, we've shifted in a lot of different areas, but at the base of it, it's education, it's spirituality, it's growth, it's connection, it's mentorship, it's transformation. I mean, we're on the same page. So, you know, get on board. Can I drop a book nugget? Yeah. That's one of my questions is, you know, do you have a favorite book you recommend? So let's jump to that question.
I'm trying to see if I can find, I don't even know where I've read through it like 18 times. So and for those of you women listeners, they make a woman's edition as well. I haven't read that, obviously, or not obviously, but grab this book. If you want to increase your transformational knowledge, grab As a Man Thinketh by James Allen.
Beautiful.
They have As a Woman Thinketh. I haven't read that one though. I'm guessing it's the same content. They just use the word woman.
All right. Well, let's start. I'm going to start closing up. So I'm going to fire some closing questions out at you.
Fire.
All right. You know, I love when Tony Robbins talks about drawing that line in the sand, when he talks about burning the boats, you know, and he says, you know, you reach that point in your life, and you may have already covered it, but I love to ask it anyway, right? Where you reach that point in your life where you say, not one more day, not one more hour, not one more minute, not one more second. That's it. I'm done. You know, so for you, you know, when was that moment, that burning the boats moment?
So my wife and I moved to Austin for me to take a job at a treatment center as a therapist. And I went to a transformational weekend, and that the owner of the company paid for his staff to go to. And I came back and I resigned 6 months after taking the job. And I launched out and I wrote my first book, and I started this coaching practice, and I started speaking. That was my burn the boats. I haven't looked back.
Oh man, I love it. Yes. A very similar story. We can get into it when I'm on your show. Now, tell us about an aha moment in your life when you realized you were now moving in the right direction. That might've been it.
Yeah, no, that wasn't it. I struggled for a little bit. I don't, I think it was probably when I got approached to do my first keynote talk. I
Mm.
was like, oh, wow, they want me to go share to hundreds of people. Wow. Okay, cool. Yeah, it was just like, I guess, because my business mentor, who I do have a mentor in business as well, because I didn't know about business when I stepped into this, right? And I wanted to succeed, was my business mentor said to me is like, you don't own a business until you cash your first check.
Yeah.
And so it was like the first time I got paid. I remember the first client that I got, and I brought the check over to his house, and I'm like, look, I'm in business. He's like, all right, now take me to lunch because you haven't paid me for any of my mentorship.
Dude, I love it. I love it. All right. What are your three most powerful I am statements?
Ooh, three most powerful. I use one, man. I'm not even trying to shortchange your question, but like I'm unstoppable.
Oh,
That's the one that I use all the time. It's my, if you've been to Tony Robbins, that's my incantation, right? I'm unstoppable. I would challenge all your listeners that like you can achieve anything. And I know it sounds so like second grade cliche, but based off my experiences, you can. It's
yeah.
gonna take some work.
I was about to say, if you've listened at all to this episode, you can do anything.
You can. You surely can.
Coming out of the hell that was your life, to be able to use everything that happened for you in your life to help transform people's lives on a level that only someone who had gone through what you have gone through could do, is where the real gold is. Because you can either sit in victimhood, or you can say, you know what? It's time to get out there and transform people's lives, because I know how to do it.
Absolutely.
All right. So, what is your personal blueprint for success? Or
Personal blueprint. Honestly, I would say I've never even been asked that question. I would say it's goal setting, ridiculous goal setting, goals that appear to be outside of the scope of what's possible. And then I surround myself with individuals that are playing at a bigger level than I am. And I stay accountable to those individuals, and I seek mentorship, and I'm not scared to invest in myself. So I think I just gave you, it's like when I talked to you about it. Like I just left a mastermind a couple of weeks ago that, wasn't fitting where I was intending on going. And I had another one already ready to join. I've already joined. So,
you can't be afraid to move just because it's working for some people, right? Everything is going to serve its purpose. Don't get stuck. Don't get stuck in 12 steps. Don't get stuck in a mastermind. I was in a mastermind before this one that I'm in. And as soon as I discovered this one, I'm like, this is what I need, right? And then I'm surrounded by these people, and I'm like, this is it. These people are like, yeah, this is amazing. And then I meet another group of people. I'm like, wait a minute. As soon as you, and I've learned, this is something I've learned too, which is do not get stuck in absolutes. This is it. This is the one. This is where it's going to happen. What feels right at the moment, dive in, go all in, play full out. As soon as that runs its course, move. Yes or no?
I think about it like how much. Yeah. Just think about like how much I idolized my first recovery sponsor, and then he farted in the car and left his windows up, and I'm like, dude, fuck this dude. I cannot. It's just a great analogy, but it's so true. Like, this is a nasty human. Like, I cannot take spiritual direction from somebody who farts with the windows up. That is fucked up. It's true though. I mean, like every my grandmother used to say it to me all the time. When she was still here, she would say, "New brooms sweep good," and then the bristles on the corners break, and you can no longer clean all the dirt. right? So you go buy a new broom, it sweeps great. 2 weeks later, it's not sweeping as good as it did, right? So it's just knowing and following your gut and your intuition when your gut says, okay, jump. Are you going to jump or are you going to stay in? Because if you stay in, you're probably going to miss out on what the next. You know what I mean?
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Don't just be like water. Be like water. Bruce Lee, baby. Flow. All right. 2 more questions. What is the best advice you have ever received?
That's a good one too. I'm probably gonna this one. I would say. You know what? No, I'm gonna do this one. So the greatest advice that I've ever received is to always remain humble and admit my faults. I don't care how far I get, I never want to appear better than anyone else. I always want individuals around me that will call me out on my BS.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we don't need cheerleaders in this world. All right. Cheerleaders will get you nowhere. Get yourself a coach that'll call you out on your shit, or a mentor, or whatever that looks like. But if everyone's telling you you're doing fucking fantastic and great and you couldn't be doing better, you're not growing at all.
But you lay your head on your pillow at night with all this regret.
Terrifying. Terrifying. I love that.
Scares the shit out of me.
Yep. All right. So Mark, what is one parting piece of wisdom you would like to share with our listeners before you go?
It's probably the quote on the back of my business cards. And that is, failure is a word reserved by those that quit. So
yeah.
Outside of quitting or outside of stopping, there's no such thing as failure. There's only trying and lessons learned.
Yes. Yes. And actually, in reality, if you are failing and you're consistently failing, right, it means you're actually moving towards something. If you're not failing, that means you ain't doing shit. So there's success and there's failure. And if you're getting a mix of both, it means you're moving towards what you want. Or maybe you're moving in the wrong direction. Either way, you're moving. And that's telling you something. Don't just get complacency is that's like the nemesis to all that is on this planet. Anyway, I went on a little rant there. Sorry about that.
That's fine. Preach.
Dude, Mark, that was amazing, brother. That was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh man, I appreciate being on here, and I love conversations like this. I've been a guest on other podcasts where I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? I'm like doing tasks on the side. But this was awesome, man. I'm very, very grateful for your mentorship and the help that you've given me on getting my podcast out there. I was, for those of you who don't know, O knows about podcasting, and he is a mentor to me. Like, I reach out to him when I have questions on stuff. And so I guess that's another lesson that I would throw out there, guys, is never hesitate to ask for help.
Yes.
Never and leverage yourself in a way in which you can bring somebody else value before you ask for help.
Beautiful. So, well, it's my pleasure, buddy. And I'm grateful to have you in my life. You're an amazing human being. And, I thank you for mentoring me as well. It's always symbiotic on this level.
Awesome. Thank you, brother.
All right, man. All right, folks, we've now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida. Can you give us a pura vida, Mark?
What is it? Pura vida?
With a P.
Buddha pita?
No. Pura vida.
Oh, pura vida. What does that even mean? What did I just say? Like, fuck me?
No.
What is that? I should have asked.
All the spirituality, right? Like right in the end, right in the toilet.
I am not a good I should have asked you what it. Oh, okay. I should have asked you what it meant before I said it. I like just turned my soul over to the devil with one phrase.
I'm leaving all that in there. I'm leaving
Don't edit that shit.
All right, guys.
Pura vida.
I'm going to be on Mark's podcast. It's Purpose Chasers. Check out Mark's website. There's where the podcast will be. I'll have it on the show notes. And again, thanks again, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Peace.
Peace.